If you've ever trusted someone only to have that trust broken in the worst possible way, you're going to feel this story deep in your bones. So hit that like button, subscribe if you crave true justice, and let me walk you through one of the most shocking and ultimately satisfying revenge stories you'll ever hear. I'm a mother in my late 50s, widowed young. I raised my only son, Daniel, through blood, sweat, and tears. Every late-night shift I worked, every meal I skipped, every bill I stretched, it was for him. Daniel was supposed to be my pride, my everything. But in recent years, something started changing in him. The warmth in his eyes faded. He became colder, sharper with his words. At first, I brushed it off as stress. He had just moved into a big house with his girlfriend, Jessica, and he always complained about money. Still, I supported him. I cooked meals, dropped by to help, even loaned him money when bills piled up. That's what mothers do, right? But then, whispers started reaching me. A neighbor muttered about strange smells from his house. Another mentioned lots of unusual visitors at odd hours. My gut twisted. I didn't want to believe it. This was my son, my flesh and blood, but a mother's instincts. They don't lie. The visit. One evening, Daniel called me. His voice was curt. "Mom, I need you to drop off some groceries. Don't open the fridge. Just leave the bags on the counter." The way he emphasized "don't open the fridge" immediately raised alarms. What was he hiding? That night I drove over. His house looked darker than usual. Curtains pulled tight. No laughter. No warmth. Just silence. When I stepped inside, the air was wrong. Thick. Metallic. Almost chemical. It made my throat sting. I called out, "Danny? Jess?" No answer. The grocery bags weighed heavy in my hands, but my curiosity was heavier. Against his instructions, I walked into the kitchen, and that's when I saw it. The discovery. The countertops were littered with strange equipment. Glass containers, tubes, bags of powder with labels scratched off, and on the stove, something boiling. The smell was so strong it made my eyes water. But the fridge, oh God, the fridge. When I opened it, I froze. Inside were rows of vials, plastic bags filled with substances I couldn't even name. Some were liquid, some crystalline, and tucked in the back, cash. Stacks of it. It hit me like a freight train. My son wasn't just struggling. He wasn't just stressed. He was cooking drugs. Right there, in his own kitchen. My chest tightened. I wanted to scream. I wanted to slam the door and pretend I never saw it. But then I thought of my grandkids someday. My neighbors. Innocent people. If that house went up in flames, or if he got caught by the wrong people, blood would be on my hands for staying silent. The breaking point. I felt my phone burning in my pocket. My hands shook as I pulled it out. My heart screamed, "Don't do it, he's your son." But my conscience whispered louder, "Do it, or you'll lose him forever." With tears streaming down my face, I dialed. 911, what's your emergency? My voice cracked. It's my son. I think he's making drugs." The operator asked for the address. I gave it. Every number felt like a betrayal, but also a lifeline. The aftermath. Within minutes, flashing red and blue lights flooded the street. Sirens wailed, doors slammed. Officers stormed in, shouting commands. Daniel appeared from the basement, fury etched across his face. "Mom, what the hell did you do?" He lunged at me, but the officers restrained him. His girlfriend screamed. I stood frozen. The boy I once held in my arms, the boy who used to beg me for bedtime stories, was being handcuffed in front of me. Daniel's eyes met mine. They were filled with rage, betrayal, and something else. Maybe deep down, he knew this day would come. The revenge twist. Here's where the story takes a darker, yet strangely satisfying turn. When the police raided the house, they found not only drugs, but proof of distribution. Records, contacts, even messages tying him to a larger ring. But buried in those records was something else. Something that turned the knife in his back. Evidence that he had been stealing money from me. Remember those loans I gave him? Turns out he never needed them. He used my sympathy as leverage. And worse, He'd been moving money from my small retirement account without me noticing. That discovery lit a fire in me. The betrayal wasn't just criminal. It was personal. The courtroom. In the courtroom, Daniel refused to look at me. His lawyer tried to paint him as a victim of circumstances, but the evidence was undeniable. When the judge read the sentence, 10 years minimum, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. Grief for the boy I lost, relief that he couldn't hurt anyone else. And when the financial crimes came up, the court ordered restitution. My stolen money, every cent, would be returned, not from him directly, but seized from his assets. It wasn't just legal justice, it was personal revenge. When Daniel was little, he used to sit at the kitchen table while I cooked. He would bang his little fists on the table, laughing, asking me questions about the world. Mom, why is the sky blue? Mom, when I grow up, will I be big like Dad? And I'd always smile and say, bigger, Danny. You'll be bigger and better. You'll do things your father and I never dreamed of. Those words, I can still hear them. I poured my hope, my faith, my very soul into that boy. So when his father died, when cancer ripped our family apart, it was just me and Daniel against the world. I worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. My hands ached, my back screamed, but when I saw him smile at the end of the day, it was all worth it. Every parent knows the feeling. You sacrifice without thinking. You bleed quietly so your child can shine. That's why the betrayal cut so deep. Because every crime Daniel committed, every secret he hid, it was built on the back of my sacrifices. The change didn't happen overnight. At first, it was little things. When he was a teenager, Daniel got caught shoplifting a video game. The store owner called me instead of the police because he knew me from church. I remember driving there, my palms sweaty, my chest pounding. Daniel stood there, sullen, arms crossed like he didn't care. I thought it was just teenage rebellion. He'll grow out of it, I told myself. But looking back, that was the first crack in the dam. Then, when he was in college, he dropped out after 1 year. He said school wasn't for him. Fine, not everyone is meant for college, I thought. But then he drifted from one job to another, always quitting, always blaming someone else. Mom, my boss is an idiot. Mom, they don't respect me. Mom, this company doesn't deserve me. Excuses, always excuses. And every time, I bailed him out. Rent, paid. Car, bought, food, delivered. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself he just needed time. But in truth, I was enabling him. When Daniel met Jessica, I felt a spark of hope. She was kind, polite, soft-spoken, the kind of girl who could ground him. When they moved into that house, I thought, finally, he's settling down. He's building a life. But soon, the visits became strange. Sometimes I'd drop by, and Jessica would look at me with nervous eyes, like she wanted to say something but couldn't. Sometimes I'd hear them whispering, and the moment I walked into the room, silence. And always, the smell. That faint chemical tang in the air. At first I thought maybe it was paint or cleaning supplies, but it lingered. Too sharp, too unnatural. That evening, the night of the discovery, I almost didn't go. I was tired from work, and part of me didn't want to face whatever groceries he wanted. But something inside me said, go. This is important. I still remember the creak of the front door, the way the shadows stretched across the walls, that awful, stinging smell hitting my nose the moment I stepped inside. I set the groceries down, but instead of leaving, I stood there, frozen, listening, silence, except for a faint bubbling sound like water simmering. My legs moved on their own, step after step toward the kitchen, and there it was. Glass beakers, jars, plastic containers. The kind of setup you only see in crime shows. Except this was real. This was my son's kitchen, and the fridge. Oh God, the fridge. Rows of baggies, each neatly labeled in handwriting I recognized. His handwriting. The same hand that once drew me crayon hearts on Mother's Day was now labeling drugs. Stacks of cash were shoved between the shelves, like loaves of bread, like groceries. That sight, it made me physically sick. My knees buckled. My hand flew to my mouth. The boy I raised, the boy I sacrificed for. He wasn't just lost. He was dangerous. My phone was in my hand before I even realized it. My thumb hovered over the screen, trembling. One voice in my head screamed, "Don't do it. He's your son. He'll hate you forever." But another whispered, "If you don't, you'll lose him anyway. Maybe worse, you'll lose yourself." I thought of the neighbors. I thought of children who could stumble into his poison. I thought of the fire hazard, the chemicals, and most of all, I thought of the boy I used to know and how far gone he was. With tears streaming down my cheeks, I pressed the numbers. 911. My voice cracked when the dispatcher answered. 911, what's your emergency? For a second I couldn't breathe. The words stuck in my throat. My hand shook so badly I nearly dropped the phone. Finally, I forced the words out. It's my son. I think he's making drugs in his house." There was silence on the line for a beat. Then the dispatcher's voice sharpened, professional, clipped. "Ma'am, are you in the home right now? Are you safe?" I whispered. "Yes, but I don't know if he's here." "Step outside," the dispatcher instructed firmly. "Right now. Take your phone and step outside." Every nerve in my body screamed against it. What if Daniel walked in? What if he saw me leaving? But my legs carried me, one shaky step at a time, out the front door. The cool night air hit me like a slap. I stood in the driveway, clutching my phone, staring at the dark windows of my son's house, the house I once thought would be the place he built his future. The dispatcher kept talking, grounding me. "Units are on their way. Stay on the line with me, ma'am." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. My stomach churned. My eyes stung. And then, the sirens began. The raid, at first faint in the distance, then louder, closer, until the street exploded with flashing red and blue. 2 squad cars screeched to a halt in front of the house. Officers poured out, moving fast, shouting commands I couldn't even process. "Police, open up! Search warrant, step aside!" They stormed through the door, weapons raised. The sound of boots thundering against hardwood floors echoed through the night. And then Daniel appeared at the top of the stairs, the confrontation. His hair was disheveled, his shirt wrinkled. He looked half asleep, half enraged. When he saw the officers, his face twisted into something I'll never forget. "What the hell is this?" he screamed. The officers shouted back, "Hands up, now!" Daniel's eyes darted around, panicked, calculating. He saw me standing outside. And in that instant, he knew. His eyes locked on mine, burning with betrayal. "You!" he snarled. His voice cracked with fury. "You called them?" I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. My throat was dry. My chest ached. All I could do was shake my head, tears streaming down my cheeks. He lunged forward, but 3 officers grabbed him, slamming him against the wall. He fought, cursing, spitting, until they snapped cold metal around his wrists. Jessica came running from the basement, her face pale, her hands trembling. She screamed his name, tried to reach for him, but another officer blocked her. The scene unfolded in chaos, shouting, crying, the crackle of radios, and me, standing there, numb, watching my son be dragged out of his own house in handcuffs. The fallout at the station. Hours later, I sat in the sterile glow of the police station. The smell of stale coffee hung in the air. My hands wouldn't stop trembling. An officer sat across from me, his voice steady. "Ma'am, you did the right thing. You might have saved lives tonight." But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and left only the shell. I asked about Jessica. She wasn't arrested, but she was under investigation. "And Daniel?" The officer's face hardened. "Your son is in deep, very deep. We found distribution records, contacts, thousands in cash, and evidence he's tied to a larger network." My stomach dropped. "Distribution? You mean he wasn't just using?" The officer shook his head. "No, ma'am, he's been selling. For a long time." The betrayal revealed. A week later, detectives called me back in. They laid out stacks of evidence, photocopies of ledgers, screenshots of text messages, names, numbers, dollar amounts. But then they showed me something else, something that broke me all over again. Bank records. My bank records. Transfers I never made. Withdrawals I never approved. Money missing from the small retirement account I'd built over decades of work. Daniel had been stealing from me. Not just lying, not just dealing, but reaching into the very nest egg I bled for and siphoning it away. I couldn't breathe. My own son, I whispered. He stole from me. The detective's voice was matter of fact. He used your accounts to launder some of the money. That ties you to it on paper, but don't worry. We know you weren't involved. We'll clear your name. But he's going away for a long time. Months passed before the trial. Each day felt like carrying a stone in my chest. When I finally stepped into that courtroom, the air was heavy. Wooden benches, the judge's stern face, the quiet buzz of whispers, and then they brought him in. Daniel shuffled through the side door in an orange jumpsuit, shackled at the wrists. My son, my baby, reduced to a number in the system. He wouldn't look at me, not once. The prosecution laid everything bare. Photos of the kitchen, bags of drugs, piles of cash, bank records with my name entangled. And the defense? They tried to spin him as a victim, a good man who lost his way. They tried to paint me as overbearing, as controlling. But the truth was undeniable. Evidence doesn't lie. When the jury returned, my heart hammered so loud I could barely hear the foreman speak. Guilty. 10 years. Minimum. The revenge twist. But it didn't end there. The financial crimes meant restitution. Every dollar he stole from me was seized back through asset forfeiture. The car he bought? Gone. The fancy electronics? Gone. Even the cash hidden in shoeboxes? Gone. Piece by piece, everything he built on lies was stripped away, and some of it came back to me. For years he treated me like a fool, like I'd always be there to clean up his messes. But now, the law itself forced him to repay what he stole, and as much as it broke me, it healed me too, because this wasn't just punishment, it was justice. The final glance. The last time I saw Daniel was during sentencing. For the first time in months, he looked at me. Really looked. His eyes weren't filled with rage anymore. They weren't filled with hatred. They were filled with something else. Regret. And in that moment, I knew. Maybe, just maybe, saving him meant losing him first. A week after the raid, Jessica showed up at my door. Her eyes were red and swollen, her hair a tangled mess. She clutched a wrinkled sweatshirt to her chest like it was a shield. I almost slammed the door shut. But then she whispered, "Please, I need to talk to you." We sat at the kitchen table, ironically the same table where Daniel once banged his fists as a little boy. She broke down sobbing. I didn't know how bad it was. At first he said it was just side money, that he was reselling things. Then it grew. He told me to keep quiet, that if I loved him, I'd stay loyal. Her hands shook as she gripped her mug of tea. I wanted to leave so many times, but I was scared. He said if I walked away, I'd regret it. The pain in her voice was real. She was a victim, too, trapped in his web of lies and intimidation. But part of me still hated her, because she knew, and she let it happen. That night, after Jessica left, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. And suddenly, a memory came rushing back. Daniel at 8 years old, running across the baseball field in his little uniform. His glove was too big for his hand, and his cap kept slipping over his eyes. He struck out 3 times that game, but when he ran to me afterward, his smile was brighter than the sun. "Did you see me, Mom? Did you see how fast I swung?" And I hugged him, laughing, telling him he was the best player out there. That boy, where did he go? 3 months into his sentence, the first letter arrived. The handwriting was sloppy, jagged, furious. "Mom, I can't believe you did this to me. You ruined my life. I'll never forgive you. You're not my mother anymore." I cried until my chest hurt, but I kept the letter. The second letter, 2 months later, was different. I didn't do half the stuff they said I did. You should have had my back. Family sticks together. You're weak. Denial. Blame. The third letter came 6 months after that, the writing softer, the words hesitant. I've been thinking a lot. Maybe I messed up. But you didn't have to call the cops. You could have helped me. Why didn't you help me? And then, almost a year later, another. Mom, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I'm starting to see why you did what you did. I hate this place, but maybe I needed it. Reading those words, my heart cracked open again. Because maybe, just maybe, the boy I raised was still in there, buried beneath the man he became. Not a day went by that I didn't question myself. What if I hadn't called? What if I had given him one more chance? What if I was too harsh? At night, I'd dream of him as a little boy, tugging at my sleeve, asking me to tie his shoelaces. Then I'd wake up, the image of him in handcuffs flashing before my eyes. I went to church, seeking comfort, but the whispers followed me. Did you hear? She called the cops on her own son. Can you imagine? What kind of mother does that? Each whisper cut like a blade. But then one woman, Mrs. Henderson, an old neighbor, touched my hand after service. Her eyes were kind, steady. You saved him, she whispered. You may not see it now, but one day he'll thank you. Those words stayed with me, a lifeline in a sea of guilt. Neighbors avoided me for weeks after the raid. Some wouldn't make eye contact. Others offered fake smiles, pity thinly veiled as kindness. But there were also those who quietly supported me. One man, whose teenage son had overdosed the year before, came to my door. His eyes were red, his voice gravelly. You did the right thing, he said. If someone had called sooner, maybe my boy would still be here. That moment, it shifted something inside me. Because maybe my choice didn't just save Daniel. Maybe it saved someone else's child too. On Daniel's 21st birthday, I made a cake. I sat at the table waiting. Hours passed. The candles melted into wax puddles. Finally, he stumbled in, drunk, reeking of alcohol. He laughed when he saw the cake. Really, Mom? I'm not a kid anymore. That empty chair across the table haunted me for years, and now it haunted me still. 2 years into his sentence, I finally went to see him. The glass between us felt thicker than steel. Daniel picked up the phone, his hands trembling. He looked older, thinner. For the first time in years, his eyes softened. Mom, I don't know if I'll ever forgive you, but thank you. Because if you hadn't called, I'd probably be dead by now. Tears blurred my vision. My hands pressed against the glass. I never stopped loving you, Danny. That's why I did it. Because I love you too much to let you destroy yourself. Silence. Then, slowly, he nodded. And in that moment, I felt a sliver of peace. When the officers finally walked in, their boots heavy against the linoleum floor, the kitchen became silent. The only sound was the faint ticking of the clock on the wall and my son's uneven breathing. He still clutched that knife like a lifeline, his knuckles white, his eyes darting between me, the officers, and the ruined pile of evidence now scattered across the counter. Sir, one officer said firmly, but not unkindly. Put the knife down. My son sneered. You don't understand. She's trying to ruin me. This is my life, my kitchen. Son, I finally spoke, my voice steady now in a way it hadn't been all night. You already ruined it yourself. His body jerked at those words like they were a physical blow. He screamed, an unholy sound that made my stomach twist. But the officers moved in swiftly, disarming him before he could do more than thrash. The knife clattered across the floor, sliding under the table where it lay, harmless now. I stood frozen as they cuffed him, his voice cracking into desperate pleas. Mom, please, don't let them take me. I didn't mean it. I'll fix it. But I knew better. This wasn't just a mistake, a slip-up. This was the culmination of years of choices, his choices, and maybe mine too, for looking away when I should have stepped in harder. As they read him his rights, I caught his eyes one last time. For the first time, there wasn't anger in them. There wasn't arrogance. There was only fear, raw, desperate fear. And yet, I felt no sympathy. Not anymore. Because fear was exactly what he had tried to make me feel tonight. The kitchen was destroyed. The air reeked of chemicals and betrayal. The police collected evidence, bagging powders, jars, and broken glass. I gave my statement, my voice steady even when my hands shook. Neighbors had gathered outside, their porch lights glowing like judgmental eyes. Whispers carried through the night. My son, once the golden boy who everyone thought had such a bright future, was shoved into the back of a squad car. And I didn't stop it. I didn't beg them to let him go. I didn't plead for mercy. Because this was my revenge. Not revenge born out of spite, but out of survival. For every time he had disrespected me, stolen from me, or treated me like I was disposable, this was the day he learned otherwise. The system would deal with him now, not me. And as the car pulled away, flashing red and blue painting the street, I whispered under my breath, "You finally pushed too far." Days later, sitting alone in my living room, the silence felt different. Not heavy, not terrifying, but peaceful. For years I had lived in the chaos my son brought into my life. His lies, his tempers, his manipulations. And yet I clung to the hope that he'd change, that the boy I raised was still in there somewhere. But when I walked into that kitchen, saw the danger, smelled the poison, I realized that hope had been killing me slowly. Calling 911 wasn't just about saving myself that night. It was about finally saving what little was left of me. My revenge wasn't about hurting him. It was about breaking free, about letting him face consequences he had dodged for far too long. And though the mother in me still aches, the survivor in me feels lighter. You know, people always say that being a parent means unconditional love. That no matter what your child does, you're supposed to stand by them. But here's the truth they never tell you. Sometimes standing by them only enables the destruction. I loved my son. I still do. But love isn't supposed to blind you to the truth. And the truth was, he wasn't just destroying his own life. He was pulling me down with him. That night in the kitchen, with the smell of chemicals stinging my nose, with that knife glinting in his hand, I realized something I never wanted to admit. My son wasn't just troubled, he was dangerous. And calling 911, that was the hardest, most painful, but also the most necessary revenge I could have ever chosen. Not revenge to hurt him, but revenge to reclaim myself. To finally say, you don't get to destroy me too. Revenge isn't always slamming doors, shouting, or burning bridges. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's making a call. Sometimes it's refusing to protect someone from their own consequences. And in a strange way, that can be the most powerful revenge of all. Because it forces the person who thought they had control, who thought they could manipulate, who thought they could get away with everything, to finally face reality. That was my revenge, not out of hatred, but out of survival. And that's where I'll leave you. But I want to know, what would you have done? Would you have made that call? Or would you have tried to give your child just one more chance? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story gave you chills, or if it made you think about justice in a different way, smash that like button right now. And hey, subscribe for more stories like this, because trust me, there are plenty more tales of betrayal, revenge, and justice you won't want to miss. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most satisfying revenge is simply letting karma do its job.